Captain Thomas Reed stood on the bridge of the HSS Pathfinder, gazing at the swirling nebula displayed on the main view screen. Humanity had ventured farther into space than ever before, their modest fleet of exploration vessels pushing the boundaries of known space. They weren't conquerors or warriors, they were explorers, scientists, and dreamers. "Captain, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from within the nebula," said Lisa, the ship's sensor officer. Her eyes were fixed on her console, brow furrowed. "In concentration. Define unusual," Thomas replied, stepping closer. "Unlike anything in our database, sir, it's structured, too ordered to be natural." Thomas nodded, feeling the familiar flutter of excitement and apprehension in his stomach. "Take us in, Helm. Standard approach protocol." As the Pathfinder glided into the multicolored gases of the nebula, the bridge crew fell silent. They had found traces of alien life before, microbes on distant moons, fossilized remains on dead worlds, but never anything that could build technology beyond Earth's understanding. The nebula parted, and there it was. A station, or perhaps a city, hung in space before them. It was enormous, easily 100 times the size of the largest human space habitat. Its architecture defied conventional understanding, with impossible angles and structures that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. "My God," whispered James, the communications officer. "It's beautiful. And active," added Lisa. "I'm detecting power signatures, movement, internal atmospheres. Captain, it's inhabited." Thomas opened his mouth to respond when James cut in. "Sir, we're being hailed." Heart hammering in his chest, Thomas straightened his uniform. "On screen." The view screen flickered, and there they were. The aliens were humanoid, but with subtle differences that marked them as definitely not human. Skin, with a faint luminescence, eyes too large and too knowing, proportions just slightly off, but they could pass for human at a distance, and that was somehow more unsettling than if they'd been completely different. "Greetings, explorers of Earth," said the alien in the center, speaking perfect English. "We are the Luminari. We have been waiting for you to find us." That was the beginning. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. The Luminari weren't just advanced, they were ancient. Their civilization had existed for over 1,000,000 years. They had mastered technologies humans had only dreamed of: instantaneous travel between stars, manipulation of gravity and time, the ability to create and destroy matter at will. And yet, they had never conquered, never expanded beyond their cluster of worlds, never imposed their will on less advanced species. "We had our age of expansion," explained Alara, the Luminari ambassador who had returned with the Pathfinder to Earth. "It nearly destroyed us. We learned that true advancement isn't measured in territory or power, but in understanding. The revelation shattered paradigms. Human governments scrambled to respond. Religious leaders convened emergency councils. Markets fluctuated wildly. Social media exploded with theories, fears, hopes, and conspiracies. But most profound was the shift in humanity's collective psyche. Professor David Miller had studied theoretical physics for 40 years. His life's work, a unified theory of all fundamental forces, lay in scattered papers across his desk. The Luminari had shared their basic understanding of physics, and in one day everything he'd worked for became obsolete. "I should be devastated," he told his colleague as they shared a bottle of whiskey in his office. "But I'm not. For the first time in my life, I feel like a child again. There's so much more to learn than I ever imagined." Across the world, similar scenes played out. Writers tore up manuscripts of first contact stories that now seemed hopelessly naive. Military strategists abandoned contingency plans for interstellar war. Engineers stared at designs for advanced spacecraft that were now as primitive as stone tools compared to the Luminari vessels. But instead of despair, a curious hope began to bloom. 6 months after the contact, Anna Martinez sat in a classroom where a Luminari teacher named Talon explained concepts that would have been considered impossible a year ago. Anna had been a janitor before the contact. Now, like millions of others, she attended the free education centers the Luminari had established around the world. The limitation wasn't your brain, Talon had told her class on the first day. It was your framework. We're simply providing a new framework. Anna understood now. The mathematics that had once been impenetrable to her now made an elegant kind of sense. Not because the Luminari had altered her mind, but because they taught differently, building intuition before rules, understanding before memorization. Robert Jones, once a dedicated nationalist who distrusted anything foreign, stood with his family at the New Delhi Luminari Center, watching his daughter interact with children from a dozen countries. The Luminari disclosure had an unexpected side effect. National boundaries seemed less important when humanity collectively faced its place in a larger cosmic community. They're not giving us their technology, not directly, Robert told his wife. They're making us earn it. But they're showing us how to work together to get there. In orbit around Earth, the first joint human luminary project neared completion. It wasn't a weapon or even a spaceship. It was a monitoring station, one that would allow humanity to observe and understand the complex interactions between their activities and Earth's ecosystems with unprecedented clarity. Before you reach for the stars, Alara had explained to the United Nations, you must first ensure your cradle remains intact. Nations that had squabbled over climate accords for decades now worked together with surprising harmony. There was something about knowing you weren't alone in the universe that made petty differences seem, well, petty. 1 year after the contact, Captain Thomas Reed sat in a small cafe in Geneva across from Alara. She sipped her tea with obvious pleasure. The Luminary enjoyed human cuisine, one of the few areas where humans had something novel to offer. Your people are advancing faster than we anticipated, she said. It's impressive. Thomas shrugged. We had good teachers? No. Alara shook her head. We only opened the door. You chose to walk through it together rather than fight over who goes first. She set down her cup. That's the test, Thomas. That's always been the test. Test? Alara smiled. There are many civilizations among the stars, some ancient, some young. We find those with potential and reveal ourselves. Some react with fear, some with greed. Your people, despite your divisions and flaws, reacted with wonder, with humility and hunger to learn. She leaned forward. That's rarer than you might think. Thomas considered this. And if we had reacted differently? We would have withdrawn, waited another century or two. Her expression grew serious. The universe is vast, but it's also governed. Species that carry violence and conquest to the stars don't last long. Thomas felt a chill. There are rules? Let's just say there's a balance. Alara's smile returned. But you need not worry about that now. Your path lies open before you. In another century, perhaps your ships will stumble upon another young civilization, and then you'll face the same choice we did. Thomas looked out the window at the people passing by, people who walked with new purpose, new hope. I think, he said slowly, we'll make the right choice. Alara nodded. So do we, Captain, so do we.